want to talk to you about this idea of unconditional confidence. In that, I think most people, they hear a word like that, unconditional confidence, and they think like, oh yeah, sure, that's a fantasy, or that's a lot of bravado if I was to be unconditionally confident. I mean, there's so many things that happen that I don't feel confident about.
Right.
So maybe you can unpack the term a little bit, what you mean by it.
Well, the first thing is that the confidence I'm referring to is somewhat a synonym of gentleness to oneself. That might seem a strange way to put it, but this is based on teachings of Trungpa Rinpoche. He talked a lot about confidence, and he was unequivocal that the root of confidence was gentleness to oneself. So I'm going to unpack it from that point of view. So if we're talking about developing unconditional confidence, where would that confidence come from? So I'm saying it comes from unconditional friendliness with oneself. So the unconditional part has to do with being brave enough and courageous enough to stick with yourself through thick and thin. And by that I mean, it's generally speaking not difficult for people to look at themselves, face themselves, be with themselves when they like what they see, right? What's very counter-habitual and extremely difficult, in my own experience this is true, and in working with lots of people, this seems to be universally true, that it's very, very difficult to stay present, fully present, and open to ourselves when we don't like what we see. So then you're given the tool of meditation, which allows you to look closely. You could say it's the method by which you could have self-inquiry and really look into your mind and how your mind works, what your thoughts are, what your emotions are, getting very, very familiar with yourself. So at that point, people often will say, well, rather than developing friendship with myself, this feels like developing, confirming, what I always feared, which is that I'm kind of a mess. Mm-hmm. Because maybe before you didn't see so clearly your envy, your jealousy, the extent of your rage, the extent of your negative mindedness, the extent in which you're always criticizing, all kinds of things, or your timidity, or your poverty mentality. Trungpa Rinpoche used to use that term, meaning always second-guessing oneself and feeling that one isn't quite up to it. So having sort of a poverty attitude about oneself, that one wasn't rich, one was lacking. So you begin to see all that. So then where does the confidence come from? You'd think that then meditation would lead to less confidence, less self-esteem. And indeed it could if meditation was harsh training, But just like with the horse whisperer, and the dog whisperer, and all that gentle training, meditation is the same kind of training. So you train again and again in acknowledging the harshness and lightening up, having a sense of humor, being more tender and vulnerable, being more loving towards oneself. So that's where the confidence comes from. And there's two aspects of it, actually. One aspect is a kind of precision where you see very clearly and you stay open and present. And the other aspect is space. Since the whole training is staying fully open and present to whatever arises, what I'm talking about here is the root of confidence is staying open and present to whatever arises in your mind, in your heart, in your body, personally what arises, rather than the outside situation.